Welcome in everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker, joined by my friend in soccer, Stuart Holgren, and it's all smiles on this episode of Flyover Footy. We've got a fallout, we've got a match to preview. We get to play the Rapids for the second time of 3 meetings this season. We have 1 win in the book. We just defeated the LA Galaxy yet again, this time 3-1. We are still undefeated against the LA Galaxy. And City is in playoff position. My goodness. I'm going to have to repeat all of this when we actually start the pod recording, but I'm too excited. Stu, it's hard to remember a happier time as a City fan right now. Not just for that, but we're doing all of this without any new transfers.
Yeah, we don't have any of our new blood in yet, our new signings in yet. So it's really just continuing on the same excellent form we had prior to the break, and the second preseason didn't do anything to hinder us or harm us. It's just DeMay working his magic.
DeMay working his magic. Stu, I'm too excited to hold it in. Let's just get going with the pod recording so we don't waste this obvious gold that we have. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. My name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us on this half fallout, half preview pod. We've got it all because City had a midweek match and they won in convincing fashion. And they have a match at home this coming weekend against the Colorado Rapids. I'm joined by my friend in soccer, Stuart Holgren, to recap what we saw on Wednesday night and then look ahead to the Colorado Rapids and talk about a massive transfer signing that is reported, rumored, all but official at this point. Carlo Holse is joining St. Louis City SC as our designated player, another number 10 DP. We've got a ton to talk about. So, Stu, are you as excited as I am to be a City fan at this moment?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if it gets much better the last week, taking down our rival across state lines, and then going out and beating a Los Angeles team, and having a chance to really stick it to a Stan Kroenke team coming up. And we're in a playoff spot.
And we're in a playoff spot. Best case scenario almost happened. We had a chance, if everything fell right, to get as high as 7th place, tied for 7th. But, I will take 8th place. And being on the hottest streak that St. Louis City has ever been on, the first time that we've taken points in 6 straight matches, 5 wins and a draw in our last 6 in MLS. We toss in the U.S. Open Cup, glorious win in the middle of that. And it has just been a ride to end that first part of the season. And we picked up right where we left off against teams that, yeah, they've been struggling a little bit, but you beat the teams that you should beat. And I would argue that we've beaten SKC and the LA Galaxy in convincing manner. And these are the wins that you pick up if you were a playoff team to be able to afford a slip up later on. But there's no slip up in sight for this team at the moment. It is pedal to the metal at this point. Things are grooving, and you're having Yohan DeMay tell us at the end of the match that he still didn't like the way we played, even though he liked the results. I mean, if this isn't City doing their absolute best without all the new signings that are coming in, Matan, Holse, and anybody else we might be signing, hint, Tam Stryker, hopefully, maybe, then I think it's just hard to really believe that we could be this good before any of the new signings to really keep that squad rotation, the roster construction going that we knew was coming. And DeMay has these players in arguably the best cumulative form of their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the man of the hour, Marcel Hartl is obviously one of the men of the hour, but Yohan DeMay is right up there. What he is crafting, what he is doing is incredible. And it's just back the man, give him a TAM 9, and let's see what this team can do.
Well, let's start there. So we've got kind of 3 parts to this episode, just to give you a quick overview. We've got the transfer news that we're going to get to right now. We have the fallout, and then we have the preview of the Rapids. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, I think they have the nice little cut-ups, but that's kind of how this show's going to go. So, Stu, let's dive right in to the latest report. I'm not even going to call this a rumor. I'm going to call this an all but official signing. St. Louis has reached an agreement with their designated player, a number 10 attacking midfielder in Carlo Holse. Carlo Holse is coming to us from the Turkish league. He's Danish by his ancestry, and he's an attacking midfielder, left-footed, 5'9", and he comes to us to help complete our attack, to elevate all of this. Most notably, he comes to us for what is reported to be a record-breaking for St. Louis City transfer fee in $6 million. And there have been multiple reports on that too. So Tom Bogert was the first to have this. It was picked up by Turkish sites and reported for 5.2 million euros, which converts up to about 6 million. So this is the real deal. This player will start alongside Marcel Hartl. He will be a part of our attacking three, and he will be a difference maker, or at least hopefully the difference maker that St. Louis needs in the attack to continue elevating their game. What do you think about Carlo Holse?
I mean, I know just what I've seen fans of. Is it Sunyaspor? In the team he plays for in Turkey.
Yep.
What they say. I mean, they call him the engine of their success.
Yes.
He's 27 years old, so he's right in that age range that you want a player in their prime. He's got pedigree. He'll hype though.
I think the most exciting part about this to a lot of fans is the transfer fee. So it's proof that St. Louis is now willing to spend considerably more than they had in the past, and it's continuous. We've talked about this in what my expectations are, at least in this summer window, and so far what City has been doing is incrementally increasing their spending. They have yet to truly make, and this is no exception, they have yet to truly make a massive splash, double-digit fee, just going above and beyond everything that they've done before. But they're continuing to build off of previous windows. So from Klaus early on with that $3.5 to $4 million transfer fee, and then a few windows later, you have Marcel Hartl on a free transfer, but having the highest paid salary at the time in over $2 million. And then you have Roman Berkey last year, but also Falou Fall for the transfer fee of reported $4 million. So the idea of City incrementally adding to this and getting to this point, it raises the bar more than it has before. And we have new expectations that align with the sporting director and head coach's first season. So building off of what they did in the winter, building off of Alex Matan, knowing that these are players that Corey Ray is bringing in specifically for Yoann Demay to play his style, the expectations have a different scope to me at this point. It's not a Falou Fall and then Lutz gets fired kind of situation. It's these guys, this type of a player, Carlo Holse, along with Alex Matan, are to me going to be core components for St. Louis City. And there's not an overwhelming pedigree to Carlo Holse, but at the same time, there is a goal scoring experience. Carlo Holse he's played for the Europa Conference League for his Turkish side. You mentioned 27 years old, 10 goals and 8 assists in 47 all competition games last season for Samsunspor in Turkey, 2 goals, 5 assists in 10 Europa Conference League appearances. The valuation on Transfermarkt is 7 million euros. It's a clear difference maker in intention. It's not a depth piece. It's not a compete for everybody else like a Matan, I think, will be. He's coming in and he's going to slot in right alongside Marcel Hartl to elevate what our attacking midfield is. And when you look at what he offers, I mean, a lot of what I've read he offers have to do with his off the ball work. This is a guy who's adept at finding space. He's adept at pressing. He's incredibly good with his awareness. He's able to pin back opposing defenses, create all that space underneath, and then he finds holes in his runs. He's a very intelligent player that I think is going to serve us well, especially when you look at how St. Louis has been scoring most of their goals this season, which is off of a press and a turnover in the midfield, and then a counterattack where you're needing to find that space. He's good. He's a good ball handler, but I think his best work does come off the ball and his distribution to others. The goal scoring isn't off of the charts, but the goal contributions are very quality. And I think that's where I look for him to make the biggest difference. You know, competing for goals leader at this point with Marcel Hartl is absolutely an expectation, but we still need a striker. We still need to sign a better striker than Simon Betcher to complete that picture in our attack. And until we have that, we're not going to have the full picture of what this looks like. But so far, so good in continuing to build and add to the quality of our attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Before and off air, I know you're talking about one of the comps to Holse, and I don't know if you want to get into that yet, but it's a very exciting comp.
Might as well go for it.
Yeah. Well, you were saying earlier, one of the comparisons put out there for him is Anders Dreyer. So if we were to get a player of that quality or similar quality, obviously that's a big ask. He's one of the top players in the league right now. But we have an incredible player in Marcel Hartl right now, who I made the point to you when he came to MLS. Hartl had comps of Hani Mukhtar. So, and I think we've definitely seen that ability from Hartl. So Holse's comparison, if he gets anywhere near that, just think about how lethal we're going to be.
His combination plays, defensive commitment, his ability to just unlock the attack. And at this point, you're having success, modicum of success, even delivering service to Simon Betcher now. Simon Betcher scored a goal against the LA Galaxy, and he should have had more goals. But that's where that last piece of the puzzle will really make this the true difference maker, is have that finisher, where it seems like to me with Holse, you're not going to need to have your striker do as much coming back to the ball. The spaces that Holse and Hartl can occupy in the channels, in the wide areas, inverting in, I think that offers a really exciting connection from the midfield. And at this point, Chris Durkin and Daniel Edelman are having a very successful partnership in the midfield. So in a second, we're going to talk about what our ideal 11 might look like in the future. And I got some question marks on that. But what I don't have a question mark on is the excitement of a right-footed Marcel Hartl on the left side and a left-footed Carlo Holse on the right side. What that's offering, I think, adds to what Yoann Damet has been doing with some of his wing backs. Thomas Totland, the right-footed left wing back, and at least the other night, Makai Joyner, the left-footed right wing back. There's a clear intention to what Yoann Damet is trying to do with the inversions and the underlapping runs when you're creating these combinations. And I think Carlo Holse fits a pretty the puzzle piece that he offers for this team fits pretty perfectly in that area. And I think once we get that finished product of a better striker, that's like I said, I can't harp on that difference maker factor enough, but Holse definitely elevates the game for St. Louis City, and he will make a perfect complement to Marcel Hartl.
Oh yeah, it's going to be incredible. Do you have the graphic for the depth chart you were getting at that?
I do. I was playing around on Soccer Data Visor, and I put this on here, and Holse is not available on Soccer Data Visor to put on here yet. But this is where it gets interesting, and pivoting over to the big starting 11, what it might look like when we sign Holse, we bring in Matan. I've got question marks about our central midfield because we've been talking about Holse and Hartl and hopefully a TAM striker. But what this team looks like right now with those two new signings of Matan and Holse, I think Matan is going to be depth. I think he's going to be the kind of attacking midfielder who comes on in the 60th minute just about every game. If we play 2 games in 3 days, he has absolute starting capability, but he offers a different profile. He's better on the ball. He's a better distributor, not necessarily in that central midfield role, because I think you want more in the attack from him. But we talked about last week that Yoann Damet has familiarity with Matan, so I'm not worried about wherever he wants to slide him. Honestly, Stu, and I haven't seen this take, so this might be a hot one. The one player that I'm actually worried about in all of this right now is Edu Leuven. I don't know, because let's look at Wednesday's match. Edu Leuven with Chris Durkin healthy and available, Daniel Edelman healthy and available, Sang Bin Zhang healthy and available. Leuven was pushed up into the attack, right? So if Leuven's best objective position, his best way to help this team was at central midfield, I feel Yoann Damet would make the right 10 work and put Leuven where he best serves the team. But what we've seen all season long in the availabilities and the non-availabilities alike is a penchant to have Chris Durkin and Daniel Edelman side by side of that central midfield. And honestly, like preconceived notions aside here, Stu, Durkin has been playing admirably this season. I think he's had his passing chart in this game against the LA Galaxy was pretty off the charts in progressive passing in final third entries. I think he led the team with 9 entries in the final third for his passes against the LA Galaxy. He's had success as that box to box where he's the engine to Daniel Edelman's destroyer. And that's why I'm kind of nervous about what Edu Leuven's time and where his positioning might be. If Leuven was preferred over Durkin at central midfield, he'd already be there. And there's two schools of thought. One is, okay, yeah, but Leuven can better help the team in the attack with his on-the-ball skills. That's fine. But I think there's no argument to me that Durkin has more stamina and can just go longer than Edu Leuven at this point in time. And that's what we ask our central midfielders to do, to be that box-to-box, the pressing that we need to have happen. You're having to run a considerable amount of time, and Durkin is able to do that for 90 minutes, game in and game out. And his on-the-ball quality is getting better. I'm not a Durkin homer necessarily, but at the same time, it's just I have a tough time fully buying into the fact that Leuven's just automatically going to drop back in central midfield with Holse and Matan arriving, and Durkin's just going to sit the bench. I don't know what to do about that thought. Whereas some other options to me are a lot easier to predict. Tomas Ostrak is on the outs. Celio Pompeu probably doesn't have a spot in the future. Sangbin Zhang, I think he's a situational role player only, and he's tactically relevant because he offers something different at that right 10 or the second striker in his speed and width. But that only goes so far when you're bringing in a DP10 to play that same position. And so you have now an abundance of bodies and not enough spots to even have them second, maybe even third on the depth chart in some of these areas. I think that you're starting to see the writing on the wall for what this squad turnover will actually look like in the next couple of windows. And the other big thing for me on Chris Durkin is he just signed an extension earlier this year. I've seen so many people talk about, assume it's going to be Leuven and Edelman, and this means Durkin's going to ride the bench or he's going to be sold. Durkin is with this team until June 2028 with his new contract. And that was extended under Yohan Demay and Corey Ray. So I could be way off base on this. And I'm not meaning to go down the Edu Leuven conspiracy theory of, there's not a spot for him because as a fan, he is my favorite player. But I'm just concerned based on what Yohan Demay has shown me in his penchant for the central midfield depth and what I know is going to happen in our attacking midfield, and how I'm pretty darn positive we are not going to be changing up formations drastically, going to 4 in the back, going to actual wingers or something like that, just because we're getting these 2 new players. They're going to fit into what Yohan Demey's been doing with this club.
No, agreed. I'm not as concerned, but maybe I should be. You're making a good point there. Chris Durkin's a fine player. I think he's played well, but I think in terms of quality on the ball, there's no comparison between him and Leuven, and it just seems natural that we talked for ages and ages in 2025, 24, 23, where Leuven's best position is and where he sees himself. And a deeper role in the midfield just seems naturally to fit him better. Now, Demay may not feel the same way on what he brings. So, yeah, it will be very telling what's happening. Now, I don't think there's any harm of having those 3 guys as not necessarily rotation options, but as your depth and center midfield with injuries and yellow card accumulation is happening, and just plain exhaustion with Edelman and Durkin running full bore 90 a game. You have 3 games in a week, you're going to need more bodies. So like you said, I think the guy who gets pushed down a lot on this is Tomas Ostrak. You have him, second on your depth chart there. Where he fits after this, I don't think he necessarily has a great spot in the squad going forward. Celio's injured. It doesn't seem like he has a spot when he's healthy again. Yeah, I mean, I think Leuven has to be not number 1 on the team sheet every week, but he's, as of right now, with the club's form and the club's 4-1 on games he starts.
Yeah, but in the attacking midfield, though, is my problem.
Yeah, I understand that, but he's still bringing qualities that Durkin's not gonna bring. And
I agree with that.
You're gonna have to give up. It's all on what Demay sees tactically and what he's willing to give up and gain.
Well, and what he's willing to give up and compromise on, especially in the central midfield, worries me more than compromising the attack, because you have you don't need the same kind of stamina as an attacking midfielder. I think you need to be intelligent with your press. But honestly, it feels like the way our press has been going more, it's designed to drive the ball over to the wing where our central midfielders can collapse on with our wing backs and force a turnover. I think that's honestly where I'm most concerned, because all of that running and Leuven's been a 60, 65, 70-minute guy in the attacking midfield. And even when he starts in the central midfield, it's because Durkin's injured or not injured, has a yellow card and yellow card suspension. But when there's a sub, Leuven either subs out or moves up. I did not intend to harp on Edu Leuven too much, but I guess my lineup graphic did that. I did that to myself. It's just something that I'm concerned about. And I think our team is better always with Edu Leuven in the starting 11, objectively. This is also just me trying to read the tea leaves of what I've seen Yohan Deme do and the tactics that I think will come into play once we have Holse and Matan as part of this rotation. And, I put Ostrak and Pompeu second and third. You might as well have not even list them. I just tried to list as many players as possible. Hartl doesn't sit, so there's really no point in having the subs behind him. And if that were to happen, I think you'd pull over some of the attacking mids from the other side. You'd have Alex Matan. You'd have maybe an Edu Leuven. You'd have Holse in there. But Hartl Hartl's where he is, unless he were to be sold or something were to happen, which I'm not even willing to entertain at this moment. But you truly never know what Corey Ray is going to be doing. And that's the scary thing for guys who are legacy City players that were here when he arrived, is you truly don't know what his thoughts are. And Klaus was exhibit A, B, and C of that.
Yeah, but I think I totally agree that whenever you have a change in leadership at a club at the soccer director level and the head coach, guys cycle through. That's the nature of the game all over the world.
Yeah.
But what can change that a little bit is winning. And guys who might not feel like they fit in the squad or the vision or whatever, when you start winning, you tend to be a little more agreeable. So I don't know if any guys on the squad who weren't Corey Ray's guys feel that way at the beginning, or when we were, sitting 1 point above Sporting Kansas City. But they might feel differently now. And I want Hartl to stay as long as he wants to stay in this club. And I know all City fans and you feel the same way.
Absolutely. 100%. We'll go more into the specifics, I think, once Holse arrives, once Matan arrives, and once we're actually getting to hear from Yohan Deme specifically about those players, because until they're here, he doesn't comment much on them. But also reinforcing that with all that depth, we need a better striker. I think as we pivot over into the fallout, Simon Betcher's performance, as quality as it was, still is indicative of why we need a better finishing striker. So, Stu, let's pivot over to fallout, and where we usually start on fallout, Santi and I talk about our starting 11. So how about we dig into that, which we did have a couple surprises, but also surprising consistency, I would say. And the depth chart that I just showed, we talked through, especially on the defensive side, is kind of really coming into fruition here in a really interesting way. You have Roman Berkey returned, first of all, in goal. That's one of the big stories. After Yohan Deme talking about needing him to be 90 minutes fit and having the injury, lots of speculation all over the place of things that we have no evidence for, I think is the best way to put it. But yet we have examples from other teams, even our own team in the past, of things that happen. You show up late to a camp, you come in, you miss a day of training, and you're punished. Those kinds of things have happened to former City players, and that has been speculative for Roman Berkey with zero evidence to it. So all we have to go off of is Yohan Deme in the fact that Berkey was not put on the matchday roster against SKC because of fitness issues, but now he's back, full go, 90 minutes, just like he said that if you want your goalkeeper in, you have to be able to go 90. Berkey did, no problem. But Berkey was in net. Dante Polvera, Timo Baumgartel, and Lucas McNaughton yet again in our back line for our three center backs. Wing backs with Conrad Wallem out due to concussion protocol were Thomas Totland and Mackay Joyner.
Yep.
On the right side, I made a huge deal about assuming he would be on the left side, and let's circle back to that one in just a second. But the central midfield was Daniel Edelman and Chris Durkin with Marcel Hartl and Edu Leuven in the attack, right underneath Simon Betcher. So Berkey returned. Still no Falou Fall in the 11. Still no Mamadou Mbake or Brendan McSorley on the matchday roster. Those are the consistencies that we've seen in these first 2 games after the restart, with Lucas McNaughton taking that starting center back role with Haziel Orozco not yet 90 minutes fit himself, but yet the sub that we saw was Orozco entering the game first. So we're pretty clear, at least I'm pretty clear on the depth chart at this moment, of Baumgartel, Polvera, McNaughton, Orozco, and then etc., depending on the need. Falou Fall would be the presumption, but at this point, if you're looking at the data, Falou Fall, since the restart, has played as many minutes as Kyle Hebert, and he's made as many matchday rosters as Kyle Hebert. The only clear-cut person below them is Mamadou Mbake, who can't even make the matchday roster now. Thank goodness we got him on a free, and we didn't invest a whole lot of money into him this past winter, because he is just not in favor from the staff. But I think, Stu, the big story that we have to talk about is Mekhi Joyner starting at the right wing back spot. What were your thoughts when you saw him, and some initial thoughts of seeing him in the game?
So, initial thoughts were surprise. I wasn't expecting to see his name on there. I think I was expecting to see Santos and Totland as our, starting wing backs. And like you said earlier, maybe that was the inversion of the wing backs that Demay wanted to have Joyner on the right and Tots on the left. Mm-hmm. I thought he was given a tough assignment. We expected Joseph Paintsill to attack on his wing, and he ended up mostly attacking down on Totland's side. Mm-hmm. But I thought Joyner did well enough for a first start in a position he's maybe not best suited for. Overall, it was good to see him. So I not too much to complain about when we win by 2.
And we should have won by 3, to be honest. We'll talk about the goals here in just a second, but that's kind of my thought. Is Joyner did fine, and I think Demay had some comments post game that I kind of want to look at on Mekhi Joyner. There were 2 quotes that kind of stuck out for me on Mekhi Joyner. One looked at Joyner starting at wing back, and after a tough assignment, possibly with Paintsill not ending up, I think he had Harbor Miller on his side mostly. Demay said post game, yeah, he's growing. It's a lot of work, and he needs to learn to be a pro, and he needs to learn to manage his own performances like within the collective. I think the task we give him is not an easy one, but at the same time, he's someone that loves a good challenge. So it was good to be able to see him out there tonight. Like, I thought he did quite well with what we asked him to do. Of course, like with more experience and more of those games, he'll grow even more. And I think that's undeniable. He's got a lot of qualities that we will see more and more, I'm hoping. Then later on in the presser, Yohan Demay was asked specifically about Mekhi Joyner and over on starting him with what Joseph Paintsill had been doing, left versus right. And Coach Demay had said, no, I'd say there was like some other consideration of why we wanted to start Mekhi on the right side that I won't share. But again, I think it's good to have different looks with the way we were tonight, with a little bit more of a diamond in the middle. We needed a little bit more width and someone able to defend in those positions. I think Mekhi in preseason has understood that this was going to be a position where we were going to look at him like in the second part of the season. So I think it was a good time for him to get that challenge and to help the team get a result. And there's a lot you can read into this on Mekhi Joyner. Kind of plays into Demay's comments early in the second preseason this summer about Mekhi and needing to, meet expectations and what was the training and all the things that the new staff were instilling on the players, and just taking a little bit for Joyner to really get into his groove there. But these comments really indicate that Joyner might see more of an elevated role in the back part of the season in these kinds of different looks. So the diamond was an interesting comment, not sharing why they wanted to start Mekhi on the right side. The only thing I could draw into it is the inversion factor, where you're looking for Mekhi to start out wide and defending and then be able to go straight to goal more when you have transition moments or in possession, and have more of those overlapping runs, maybe with an Edu Leuven or a Sangbin Zhang, especially when he came in. But unfortunately, Mekhi didn't have that opportunity with Sangbin. I think Mekhi's most interesting factor here is that he was fine. And it's most interesting because I think fine in this regard, leading to a result, getting the minutes, being able to just compete does go a long way in proving that you're ready for that role. It's kind of an underrated facet to not mess up and to just have an okay game. Joyner had an average to above average game, I would say, but that's kind of what was needed from that role at that time. We created so much underneath of Simon Betcher with Marcel. Marcel Hartl had an absolutely phenomenal game, made team of the match day deservedly, but Joyner did well in his roles. I think he was beat defensively. Maybe one time that could have bit us had a cross on the ground found its way to a Galaxy player in the middle. I think that might have been in the second half. But overall, he didn't impress to the point where, okay, I'm putting him in pen for the Colorado Rapids game. But also, spoiler alert, I do have him in my starting 11 for the Rapids game. I think he was subbed out early enough that he's got minutes left in the tank, and we've got a break, I think, after the Rapids game anyway. So it's an opportunity that I want to see Joyner continue with, and I don't expect Vollum to bounce back that quickly from concussion protocol with 3 days rest. So why not continue to give Mekhi Joyner a look, especially, and that might be our big test, was this tactical against the LA Galaxy specifically, or is there something more to it that the look between Mekhi as that right piece of the diamond and the inverted factor of him on the right side with Totland on the left that DeMay kind of likes? Because Thomas Totland himself also had a pretty phenomenal game.
Oh yeah, I mean Totland was. Oh my gosh, there are a few moments going up against and mentioned his name several times now. Joseph Paintsil 2 years ago was the fastest player in MLS. Now 2 years is a long time in a professional athlete's career, so I understand that. But he's still one of the paciest wingers in the league, so that is a very tough assignment. And there were a few moments in that match that I think in the first half Paintsil did really well to bring the ball down, and he was set to turn, and Totland was just positioned perfectly to just make it look easy. And I love Tots. I loved what he brought. He played phenomenally.
What I've seen in the chat, it's obvious that Mekhi Joyner didn't have a good or great game. I'm saying an average to above average game. But when you have all the other players on the team performing at that level, Tots, Durkin, Edelman, Hartl, Leuven, even Betcher had himself a good game. And our back line has been performing incredibly well. Like the overall level of performance in this team, this is to me one of the perfect opportunities you could give to Mekhi Joyner because anything that he's deficient in, almost the other players are covering up for him. So it's an opportunity to have him play without having to depend on him in any single starring role. And that's important, I think, to get his feet wet and to get the confidence of, I was part of a winning performance. We were this close to having a clean sheet, and Joyner will continue to get better with more minutes. And defensively, that's never been the exciting factor about Mekhi Joyner. It's never been he's a wing back because of his defense, and we can count on him to help keep clean sheets. It's what he offers in the attack. And as a wing back, it's almost the compromise of to get him in the attack and the on the ball and transition work that he offers to goal is what you're looking for, instead of, all right, if we want to close out a game, we can count on him to be part of a 5 in the back and keep that clean sheet. That's the compromise. And that's the part of Mekhi's game that will continue to grow as he becomes more comfortable with the expectations DeMay has of that position, because he's not stepping into the 10. I mean, I was looking at notes and stuff from preseason and jokes and things like that about Mekhi playing the 10. And I can tell you those days are over, especially with the new arrivals we talked about earlier. It's wing back or bust right now for Mekhi. And I hope it's wing back, because I would hate to see Mekhi go or can lose time and go back to what we saw in the first part of the season. I think he has too much of a future ahead of him. And if Vollum is out for any period of time, perfect opportunity to get him some more consistent minutes.
Yeah, Santos certainly hasn't shown that he is maybe a guy who is insurmountable on the depth chart as we were. So, yeah, I think you convinced me on. I wasn't going to have Joyner as starting, but I think you've convinced me already.
Well, it's either Joyner or Santos, and then you lose the inversion factor, and you're dealing with cross after cross after cross again. And I still can't do it. But yeah, so some other good things about this game: the high quality chances created. I think this game just seemed impressive from a factor of the number of individual high quality, high XG shots that St. Louis had. And Simon Betcher had a handful of them, but also you had, Marcel Hartl clearly. There were just plenty of opportunities. Like I'm looking at the stats from Soccer Data Visor and seeing that Simon Betcher himself had a good three of the top chances. And in fact, the top three chances of the game were Simon Betcher at 41, at 68, at 7. He had a .51, a .499, and a .31 individual shot XG. I mean, one was a goal, the one at 68, but the other two, I mean, it almost doesn't get better than that. The 7-minute was, in fact, kind of a rebound shot as well. So the ability to finish still isn't there consistently for Betcher. I would argue that 68-minute goal that he had, you can't ask to be put in a better position. That goal was as much credit to Marcel Hartl as it was Simon Betcher. And we're going to look at it in a minute. But Stu, what other good things in this game, whether it's a player or a phase or a moment or anything, kind of stood out to you?
Well, there was one moment from Edelman that I really liked. That it was still the first half, and it was Paintsel again, talking about him. And he was, Paintsel had the ball, and he was rounding Edelman to get into the box and look for the cross across the goal for LA Galaxy players. And Edelman just had a perfectly timed tackle to kill off that Galaxy opportunity. And that was, I thought, an underrated match or moment of the match. Great tackle. Just moments like that. You need them. They're not quite as lauded as obviously the brilliance that Hartl did, but that was a moment that stuck out to me.
Edelman and Polvera had some really good defensive moments. McNaughton had a good performance defensively. The goal is obviously what everybody's going to remember. But Edelman continues, and this was congratulations to Daniel Edelman for his 100th career MLS start at just 20. I think he's still 22 years old. Daniel Edelman has cemented himself in that number 6, the dual pivot role for St. Louis, allowing Chris Durkin to be unlocked a little bit more and get into the attack and help to progress the ball and play a better link-up play. Whereas Edelman has I think, a little bit more of a defined role defensively. As much as he wants to be more on the ball, I think he has settled into a pretty good groove and provided that defensive stability in the midfield that really, really comes in handy when you have wingbacks push up so high. And honestly, that's probably one reason that Mekhi Joyner doesn't need to worry about as much of a defensive responsibility in the run of play. Is you have the 3 center backs and you have Daniel Edelman who can help clean up the mess in front of them. And Lucas McNaughton can move out wide just a hair bit. And there's just less overall pressure because of a central midfielder like Daniel Edelman. So one of those things about everybody else operating at such a high level kind of covers up for some areas of a game that might be a compromise for Yohan Demay. And if you look at this game holistically, Stu, the underlying stats make it seem like this was a dominant performance by St. Louis. I didn't get that sense watching it. It didn't feel like a dominant performance by St. Louis. Looking at the XG, St. Louis was up 2.2 to 1.26. The shots were 15 to 11 St. Louis. Shots on target 9 to 3. There was a 53 to 47% possession. St. Louis had 7 corners to Galaxy's 4. And St. Louis had more expected points with all of these put together, 2.1 expected points to 0.71. I mean, the overall and the underlying metrics really skew towards St. Louis pretty significantly, but the eye test, it didn't feel like that. And I think it was a lot of what I like to call useless possession or mundane possession, where it's the Galaxy just have the ball, but they're not doing anything with it, right? They can't break down St. Louis. They're not efficient with the ball. They're not efficient with their possession. In the first half, I think they had 58% possession overall, but they didn't have anything to show for it. And they didn't have any shots on target that were anywhere near the quality that St. Louis had multiple of in the first half. They just seemed like they were highly inefficient, and that's a credit to the defense of St. Louis as much as anything. So from the eye test, I think that inefficiency might impact a lot of people's opinions of how the phase of play was going for most of the first half, or at least the first half up until the goal was scored, where the Galaxy might have had possession, but they didn't do anything with it. And I do credit our defense for that.
Yeah, and I am curious how this match would have gone if João Klaus or really LA Galaxy had any experienced striker up top. that could have started. I thought
A
Peyton Miller
striker in
did.
general, right?
Yeah, I thought Peyton Miller did all right for what he was asked to do, but there's a clear gap in quality there. Um, but I mean, we'll get to his bright moment later on in this match.
Credit to our friend Edgar over at News Across the Galaxy. Our LA Galaxy has been awful since losing 4 players right before the restart of MLS play. When you play us, you have to punish us. Galaxy is in very bad shape right now. And they'll get better. You know, the Galaxy are, they're still a bubble playoff team right now with all those injuries. And I think they'll bounce back once they get Klaus back. I think so Robert Taylor's still getting acclimated over there. And they just signed that, the Japanese striker from Birmingham City, I think it was.
Yeah.
31-year-old. So they're getting their reinforcements. I maintain, just like I said before this game, we played the Galaxy at the most perfect time. And we play them again here in a few weeks. And I don't know if it's going to be the same Galaxy team. I think they'll be a little stronger, but hopefully St. Louis will be stronger as well. And when you play a team like this and you're expected to win because of all of the injuries, the intangibles, those are games you have to win. And this version of St. Louis City is doing that successfully. So Stu, let's look at these goals real quick, because we can't skip by a Fallout that has 4 goals and not look at them. So we're going to borrow some clips on video from our friend Chris Gebhardt at STL Soccer News. And we're going to look first at Lucas McNaughton's goal, which has been, I've heard people say this is the most beautiful corner kick goal that has been scored by St. Louis. And I don't know if I can do Tim Parker that dirty, but this was a really beautiful goal. So the thing that strikes me about this, Edu Leuven caused this, first of all, by forcing the corner with a shot that was saved. Lucas McNaughton, I mean, it happened so fast. But honestly, when they showed the camera angle before the goal, even right here, we're watching it, the zoom in of the goal has Lucas McNaughton nowhere near it. This is the most exciting part to me, is where his movement was. Back post to front post, and then how he was able to head that ball perfectly to score near the back post somehow. I mean, the geometry of this goal was one of the more fascinating aspects to it. He just comes streaking from the back to the front, opens up, uses his full size, jumps up, and it finds him perfectly. Marcel Hartl, I don't know if this was a game plan. It seemed like it was, because McNaughton seemed very intentional in what he was doing. But Hartl placed that ball perfect. McNaughton caught it perfect, and it was a fantastic-looking goal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think McNaughton, you can say now, has a hand in both the maybe 2 most memorable dead ball goals this season, with his assist to Brendan McSorley's goal earlier this year. Excuse me.
True.
But yeah, what absolute perfection there.
Yeah, and when a player moves like this, moves that well with that much intention and speed, I think you know that the play was probably written up for him. And you look at the other players for City who are more pinning back the Galaxy players. That's something that when they zoomed in, it looks like Timo Baumgartel, Mekhi Joyner was in there, Simon Betcher. They were pinning the Galaxy defenders back, freeing up that space for Lucas McNaughton to get to. If this was an Alex Langer special, then tip of the cap to Alex Langer, because this one was great. And that's how you have to win these corner kick battles, is you use the full team and you draw up a play for one single person, and you have the quality on the team now with Marcel Hartl, and you're going to hit better quality still yet to come. Leuven's back in form. The quality on the free kicks and the corner kicks is there, and St. Louis is now having consistent success in burying those. So that was a fantastic spot, and it came at 42 minutes. So you had that first half and most of the inefficient possession that I mentioned by the Galaxy, but then it wasn't that long before St. Louis just pulled a goal out of their hat with Marcel Hartl's magic yet again. So I'm going to look at this 45 plus 1 goal that Hartl scored, and how he was just able to take whatever he wanted. And there's a little bit of controversy if you're watching this video, but it was Thomas Totland that basically laid it off. Hartl looked like he was going to cross the ball over on the floor and continue dribbling towards central, and then he just randomly shoots it. He finds a space, sees a clearing, he shoots it, and it's a goal. And then after the goal, you see Marco Royce was down. Yohan Demay was asked about this post-game. Let me find the quote. When he said, listen, we've got a competitive group last week, and the way we finish sorry, that's not the quote. It's a quote about so last week Kansas City didn't play the ball out of bounds. We didn't play the ball out of bounds when Marco Royce was down. And so there was a question about that in the press conference. DeMay said, I don't think we need to create a controversy where there is none. Like the referees have mentioned that they were going to be the ones stopping the play when there's a player going down. There's that gray area where some of the players are kicking the ball out. We could have done it tonight. Ultimately, it's the choice of the players not to do it in that moment. It's not too much up to us or a scenario that we planned before. I mean, obviously. We get the goal, and of course, it's a mixed feeling in terms of the way they block that, but that's the referees have to make the decision and take responsibility in those plays. DeMay went on to talk about last week, but one of the factors in this goal also is that Carlos Garces received a yellow card, and that would end up coming back to bite him. And his yellow card, this was the first just completely unnecessary yellow card for getting in the opponent's face, for continuing play when the referees allowed them to continue play. Just a wild show after the goal, but what'd you make of the Hartle goal itself?
Well, I mean, you talked earlier about, being inverted and having that right foot on the left side, and you can see on that clip, you can see exactly where he's looking at Marcinkowski, and he gives two looks. After each touch, he gives a look, and then he just pulls the trigger on the shot. Mm-hmm. And Marcinkowski, I think, was caught unaware there. It looks like he had his attention drawn over to Joyner for a split second, and that's all the time that Hartle needed to make him pay. So
these are the kinds of movements too, like you mentioned, the inversion where Totland plays it off, and Hartle has the perfect positioning, and if he can find the spacing with that positioning, then the way he can curl that ball in is just picture perfect. And you can picture whether it's Joyner or even Holse when he comes in on the other side doing that same kind of thing. And that's kind of the benefit of what DeMay's putting together. I like that call. Then after halftime, Stu, didn't take long for St. Louis to get the advantage that we needed to close this one out. I don't have the video. I don't even think it's a worthwhile video, but it's 49 minutes in the game. And Carlos Garces, second yellow for idiocy. I don't know how to describe this other than it was a boneheaded play that if it was one of our players making this who made that mistake, I would be harping on him to know he wouldn't live it down. I mean, they were down by 2 goals. They weren't out of it. A 2-goal lead is referred to as one of the more dangerous leads in soccer because of how quickly it can evaporate. But he gave things up. He lost his composure. He lost his focus. He fouls a player and then he goes and kicks the ball away. The referee almost acted like it was the dumbest thing he'd ever seen. And I need to find a clip of that because if you go back and watch the replay, the referee he immediately goes for the card. Yeah. But when there's dissent or there's a question about it, he almost shrugs it off like it was obviously a yellow card. And you were obviously already on a yellow card. Are you kidding me? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, Garces didn't really fight that one too much. He fouled Simon Betcher, and Betcher was getting up with the ball and preparing to restart play, and Garces just kicked it away. And it wasn't, he didn't boot it. He just touched it, kicked it away. But that just absolutely boneheaded. You're on a yellow. What are you thinking? Like you said, your team's not out of it. You're down 2 goals, but you're at home. Mm-hmm. Just one of those things that you see where you're like, this is pure MLS after dark madness. What came over that man?
So after that happens, it's about 10 minutes later, and LA makes a sub, Robert Taylor for Marco Royce. That was an attacking a striker sub, just trying to have some kind of fresh legs or new answer in the attack. And then a few minutes later, we have the first City subs, a 3-man change. Sangbin, Haziel Orozco, and Rafael Santos enter for Edu Leuven, Lucas McNaughton, and Mackay Joyner. Like-for-like changes in the attacking role on the back line, and then a switch of the wing backs where Santos takes the left side, Tots goes to the right. And then it was a pretty quiet 5 minutes or so until Galaxy made one more change, but then it was Simon Betcher. And this goal was... This was the best goal of the game for me. I think Hartle with individual brilliance, but the way that this goal ended up taking shape overall started with the Galaxy in transition, and it's Dante Pulvera, the single center back in the middle of the field. Everybody else is up higher. Dante Pulvera stops the ball, gets it over to Santos, flicks it to Durkin. Durkin passes up to Hartle, and then just as quickly as Hartle receives it, he plays it over the top to Simon Betcher. And this was the pass of the game. Catching Simon Betcher in stride like that, you can't make it easier for a striker than what Marcel Hartle did in this pass. And Simon Betcher, credit to himself, stayed composed. We make jokes all the time. I made him earlier. I'll make him again later about his lack of finishing and the easier chances that he's missed, and how he still leads MLS. Jeremy Clement put this in the chat. He still leads MLS in the worst differential between expected goals and goals, even after scoring in this game. But that also just goes to show how much XG he accumulated in this individual game. But the press or the turnover, the recovery, and then the immediate counterattack, that was beautiful by St. Louis. The quick passing sequences here to find open players, and then the vision from Marcel Hartle to immediately play it. It wasn't over the top, but it was playing it. It was over enough, and it just did everything that he needed to for Simon Betcher.
Yeah, that was a perfectly weighted pass, and you see that sequence right there. Fair play to Durkin too, and Santos. I mean, they all played their part perfectly, and I think Hartle, for good reason, is going to get most of the love on this goal. Obviously, Betcher needs to finish, and he did it. But that pass is just absolutely phenomenal stuff.
It was beautiful. That came at 68, sorry. And then you had some LA subs at 74. And then LA did get one back, so we have to look at that one. It was an 86 goal, and it was started by Jaziel Orozco, who kind of just got himself into trouble. He progressed the ball over on the right side, and it wasn't even necessarily, to me, the fact that he had an open player for a split second that he could have passed it to in the middle when he had 4 LA Galaxy players pressure him over on the right side. But the bigger thing to me is he just lost control of the ball. He seemed to lose control just enough to have to slow himself up, and then he never really recovered it in time to know what to do with it. So Orozco doesn't often find himself in this attacking phase, but you could see in the progression right there, he loses the ball a little bit, and then he tries to recover it by keeping possession, taking it to the touchline, and then I don't think he has full recovery of the ball to be able to make a pass that is the only pass that he could make. And instead he loses it. Can't identify that pass. And once he loses it, LA is off and running. And it's I think the first career goal from Troy Elgersma, who recovers a ball in the middle, right in the middle in front of goal, able to put it home when City's defense is just scrambling at that point. And it was just a really unfortunate touch that led to that. Because I think City was doing a good job defensively in transition. Timo Baumgartel, Chris Durkin, and company, Dante Polvera, but they're doing a good job in attacking the ball, but the ball hits them and just falls loose in an open area, and Berkey loses his clean sheet, unfortunately.
I mean, credit to where credit's due. That was a great touch by Harbor Miller and great run by Harbor Miller to get the ball between Timo's legs right there before he sequence of events bounce off Durkin and to Troy, who buries it. But the most painful series or item of that whole event chain was the commentator on Apple TV right before Orozco lost the ball, maybe 5 seconds before, talked about how Berkey's about to get the clean sheet.
Oh,
just that close. The jinx was on at that point.
You can't say that. It's like the perfect game in baseball. You got to keep your mouth shut on that one. Otherwise, you're gonna jinx it. David McDonald mentioned that there was an LA goal scored earlier. I think it was in the first half that was called back on a terrible foul call. I didn't see the replay, but I didn't see much on that foul either. So I'll just take that one and kind of hope to move past it, because that was kind of a gift, I think, to us.
Yeah, Justin Hack put his hand on Timo's back.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a light touch. So I mean, you take him where you can get him.
It all evens out, and that's my response when it goes our way. Is it all evens out? Because I let everybody hear it when it doesn't go our way. I still add the caveat that it all evens out, but to me it is what it is. I think St. Louis had their own fair share of misses that should have been goals. So that's one of those things that still, it evens itself out. And ultimately, I mentioned the underlying stats. I think the best team won this game, and it was a just result, and we earned it. Nothing can take that away. Just like nothing can take away from the goals that we earned against SKC. Try as they might on the Kansas side of the fence. But we will not get into that too much today. We've got too much extra to get to, Stu. So any final words on the LA Galaxy match? I will say, going over some notable players. So Marcel Hartl, man of the match, made the MLS team of the match day. He had 1 goal, 2 assists, 5 goals, 4 assists in MLS now. I think 8 total goals in all comps for Marcel Hartl. He's tied for 3rd in MLS for goals scored outside the penalty area. That's a cool stat that the club sent out. Lucas McNaughton scored his 3rd career MLS goal, 1st of the season and 1st with City. Simon Betcher had his 2nd goal of the season. He now has 7 goal contributions. So most of them are assists, obviously, 2 goals, 5 assists. But Simon Betcher's quietly doing what he needs to do to continue to help this club score and win. Not doing enough for the striker position still. I'm still on that team. We need a new striker, but Betcher's doing a serviceable job lately with the goal contributions. And he's doing honestly, a more than serviceable job in everything else. I think he's still playing a worthwhile connective striker role, if not a consistent out-and-out target striker. We mentioned McNaughton, Polvera, Edelman. Edelman's 100th career start. He had a great game defensively. Chris Durkin had an assist, now has 5 goal contributions this year with 2 goals and 3 assists. And Thomas Tolland with his first assist of the season. Just a holistically fantastic performance by this club away, which we have historically struggled in general in away matches under previous regimes.
Yeah, I mean, do you know if MLS considers a drawing a penalty to be an assist? Because Betcher's done at least one of those. I mean, last week, obviously, or last
it
week,
helps it helps the goals added metric, but I don't think it's an assist.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if that was officially counted as an assist or not if scored. Yeah, I mean, overall, like Edgar said, Galaxy are in a tough spot, so you have to make them pay when you can. And, this run in July is so crucial to us if we want to make the playoffs, and so far, so good.
So far, so good. Let's move forward to our match day preview, and we'll kind of look at the fallout of the standings as part of that. You're listening to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS, and we are now looking at Colorado this weekend. St. Louis has a very recent history with Colorado. We've already beaten them once this season, 1-0, and we're going to play them again after this weekend in the U.S. Open Cup semifinals. So this is a team that we need to get some familiarity with, remember what they're like. They've had some additions, they've had some changes here in the transfer window, and in this season overall. It's not the same Colorado Rapids that we've seen in years past, that's for sure. But so looking at how these two teams match up, St. Louis comes in here 8th in the West. Colorado is 11th in the West. St. Louis is 6-4-6. Colorado is 6-1-9. St. Louis has 22 points to the Rapids 19. St. Louis has 22 goals scored to the Rapids 26. St. Louis has 23 goals allowed to the Rapids 24. And they're pretty even in a lot of metrics. Possession, the Rapids are averaging 56 to the St. Louis's 50, so both teams are comfortable with the ball. St. Louis averages more key passes by 3, 10.6 to 7.8. These two teams, I think, are, as they stand now, a little more evenly matched than a lot of people might think. And for St. Louis in particular, Stu, after this LA Galaxy match, this is the best 6-game stretch in MLS play in their history. Best 6 or 7 games stretch in their entire history in total, if you count the U.S. Open Cup run that they're currently on. 16 of 18 points in the last 6 for St. Louis. The next best performance like that was the first 5 matches of their expansion 2023 season. They won 5 straight games and then they lost. And so that's the form St. Louis is carrying into this. They won against the Galaxy. They had the 3-2 win against SKC, 3-0 against Austin, 1-1 draw against DCU, and a 2-1 win against LAFC. So no slouches in some of those matches, especially. Colorado just beat San Diego 1-0. So that's a notable win for them. Not just a win in 3 points, but holding San Diego to a very minuscule amount of shots and shots on target and keeping a clean sheet against San Diego. So that was what they did midweek on Wednesday. Before that, they lost 2-1 against FC Dallas. They lost 2-1 against Real Salt Lake. A 1-0 win against Minnesota United, and then our 1-0 win against them was before that. So this Rapids team, they like to keep tight matches. Talk about that in a minute. but they have not been an out-and-out goal-scoring team since about March, maybe April of this season. I think they dumped 6 goals on in Portland. They had some really high-scoring individual games. 2 or 3 of their games account for maybe almost half of their goals scored, just about at least a third of their goals scored. And so that's this Rapids team is streaky, but here of late, they have not had the attacking firepower that would really worry City. They do like to keep tight games. They do like to keep possession. To me, this is another game where City is playing so well, though, that I think they can dictate as much as they want. And we expect them to go into this game healthy. We know Salio's out. Valum, we're not expecting to play, still in concussion protocol. We are recording this on a Thursday night, and so Friday is the press conference ahead of this game. We hope to get an update from Johan Demey on player availability. Fitness is going to be the biggest factor for this. So 2 matches, second time I've done that. 2 matches in 3 days with a travel to the West Coast being part of that. It's a factor, right? So recovery is going to be a big deal on Thursday, on Friday, just to see who's available to start. Some players that subbed out early, I think they have a likelihood of entering that match, looking at players like Edu Leuven, Lucas McNaughton, Mackay Joyner, maybe even. You've got some guys like Daniel Edelman who almost went the distance. I didn't even mention that Paul Maralt and Miguel Perez came in at the end of the LA Galaxy game, but credit to them, they did. Betcher and Edelman had a reprieve. And I think that might speak to a little bit. Like, we obviously expect Betcher to start. Edelman seems like he's a pretty good candidate to start as well. But just overall fitness, we'll get into our 11 later on. I think that's one of the biggest storylines going into this for St. Louis. But Colorado has a similar issue. They played the same night as St. Louis. They rotated a little bit, but how those 2 teams will perform with the fitness on the short rest is going to be a part of the story. For St. Louis also, upcoming, just looking ahead, knowing that we had 2 matches in 3 days, they've got a full week break after Colorado before they host Real Salt Lake. Then they have a 2-week break with I think it's an international window in early August with San Jose, traveling to San Jose after that. So there's a little bit of a break. I'm not sure if it's an international window, actually, now that I think that the World Cup, but there's an extra week of break built in there. What do you get a sense of as far as what you saw against the Galaxy? Just some players knowing who didn't play that you might be thinking we might see more of.
Well, my instinct says to just run it back, though. Yeah. Running back the same lineup, two times in a week is maybe not the best choice. But where we're going to find, or where DeMay thinks there's going to be a rotation option, is very interesting. I mean, Edelman, you mentioned, as one. I think obviously right wing back would be another position, or left wing back, depending on where Totland plays.
Totland went the distance too.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. Totland went the distance too, but very interesting. I think you mentioned at the very end, I think Paul Maralt probably sees a few more than 4 or 5 minutes this time around. Maybe it's 10 minutes total. So maybe a few more minutes as he kind of moves into that sub role off the bench that Brendan McSorley was occupying earlier. I'd like to say we'll see more of Orozco possibly starting, but you can't bench McNaughton after that match.
No, I agree with that. You can't. I think the center back trio, you run it back. I know that they ran a pretty good amount in transition, but those are some stalwarts of the team right now, and I don't see any reason to change that dynamic. The wing backs, like you mentioned, that's one of my bigger storylines to follow, is the tactical plan that DeMay has, just as much as the fitness and availability of players. So if we're assuming Volum's not available, let me back up. If Volum's available, I think he starts. I think he's right back in there, as long as he's fit after. But I still think there's too much. There's not enough time between matches when you're in concussion protocol to hop back in there. So Volum should rest, in my eyes, unless something miraculous changes after that Galaxy game. And if that's the case, then the tactical question comes into play of keeping Totland on the left, Joyner on the right. The only other option right now that we've seen is Santos. Legitimately, I think we might have seen Sangbin at a wingback spot as a cameo appearance once upon a time earlier this year. But it's been, now that Joyner is in the equation, it's been just those 4 players: Volum, Totland, Santos, and Joyner. And it's a tactical decision, and whatever hidden magic Demay doesn't want to talk about for Joyner on the right. But I didn't see anything overly specific about the Galaxy that makes me think that that was targeting something that they had in their midfield or in their defense or with their fullbacks. I like the look. I think inverting our wingbacks like that provides a ton of value in how we can create with our attacking midfielders. But I also don't think I saw anything too unique to the Galaxy, so I would expect something similar. But then also, will Edu Leuven continue playing in the attack? And I mentioned it last week. Is there any idea for Demay of getting positional familiarity ahead of Mata and Holse arriving? And if not, then Leuven, I think, would continue playing in the attacking midfield. That's just it goes back to my issue and question from the very beginning of the pod, which is I don't know what Edu Leuven's role will be once those two players arrive. I don't think it's fair to just assume that because Leuven's been with us since the very beginning and we know the talent and skill that he has, that he's immediately going to be preferred over Matan and Holse when they arrive. Definitely not Holse, but that's part of the equation. And Leuven as our attacking midfielder alongside Hartl, you could have far worse. I'll just say that Leuven offers a level of quality there, knowing you can trust Durkin and Edelman. But I think he continues playing in the attack because I'm not taking Durkin and Edelman apart from each other. That duo is one. It seems to be that's one of Demay's most favorite tools in his arsenal, alongside Timo Baumgartel, Dante Polvera, and Marcel Hartl. Their roles have been so unchanged since Demay took over. Baumgartel, Polvera, Durkin, Edelman, Hartl, and by default, well, I'm not going to say Betcher because Betcher lost his role to Cordova there for a little bit. So those 5 players with Berkey, so 6 players cemented in their role, been pretty consistent. Edu Leuven has stepped into that, but all of it's going to change, I think, when the new arrivals come. Do you see Edu Leuven playing in the attack against Colorado Rapids?
I do. And if you want to toss another guy out there who was written in pen in the first half of the season, who lost his spot due to injury and fitness, Jazzy. I mean, Jazzy had a phenomenal run of matches in the first half of the season, and now McNaughton has supplanted him. So, that's how the sport goes, where it's kind of a fluid lineup you get. I do see Leuven still. I mean, I'm not sure at this point if you'd start saying Ben over him. I think that would be a quite upsetting some people in the fan base. I think as far as the attack goes, it's going to look pretty similar. Where the midfield looks and wing backs versus Colorado is again where my question lies. But
yeah,
I don't think. I mean, Demay said he wanted improvement. He liked the way we play, like you said, but he wants improvement. So he will keep tweaking. But yeah, he would choose his own mother over Dante Polvera at this point, I think.
You mean he'll choose Dante Polvera over his own mother at this point?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. My brain.
I agree, much to the chagrin of the Falou Fall fanatics out there. And I like Falou Fall a lot, but I am bought in on Dante Polvera at center back. I think he's shown us too much quality, and his goal-saving tackle in the U.S. Open Cup lives rent-free in my brain and buys him all the goodwill that he needs until he proves me otherwise, which he hasn't yet. Haziel Orozco at wingback is a comment that Robert Clark says in the chat, and he briefly made a cameo appearance at wingback until he was concussed. And while he was doing that, we had arguably our best 10 minutes of the season up until that point before the World Cup break. So I'm not opposed to Orozco at wingback if it is defensive minded. So we saw what can happen when Orozco gets some happy feet going in the attack in transition, loses the ball, creates a turnover or allows a turnover, and then we're scored on. That happened against LA. Not saying that that's going to copy paste in the future because he's out in that position, but I'm just saying he offers a more defensive minded approach. That's pretty obvious. And he's more limited in his skill in the final third. So that is a very much a tactical decision for that. There's a question from Matt Z in the chat. Do you think we'll see fall start on Saturday? I don't want to speak for Stu. I almost said we do not. I definitely do not see Falou Fall starting on Saturday. We know there's some fixture congestion, but our back line is gelling too much, like we said. So it's running it back to me. But Stu, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go into Colorado a little bit, getting to know our opponents because, like I mentioned, we're going to play them again in just 2 months' time in the U.S. Open Cup, and they're probably going to look fairly similar. Colorado is a possession-first 4-3-3 team. They want to build through the back. They want to control their territory. They're not counterattacking. They're not a low block. They have one of the higher pressing numbers. PPDA, they're ahead of St. Louis in their PPDA numbers, but they do like to possess the ball. I mentioned, I think it was a 56, 58% possession overall this season. Their attack is built around a central hierarchy, not with play. They've got Rafael Navarro as the finisher. They've got Paxton Aronson as their connector in the midfield. Navarro is their true out-and-out 9. That's a competitive advantage I think they have against St. Louis. Paxton Aronson links the midfield to the front line. And I think that what Aronson can offer is finding all that space between the lines. Navarro will occupy center backs. He'll pin them back. He's the target striker. I think City's defensive shape with our center backs we just talked about will have to account for Rafael Navarro. Their wide players add more chaos, I think, than just crossing volume. So in their attack, they now have Georgie Manuhu. They have Dante Seeley who can stretch the field. They can go 1v1 against attackers. So whether it's a wide center back or a wing back, some of those battles with Manuhu and Seeley, I think, will be interesting to watch. But the danger is not necessarily from crossing in the wide areas. It's the dribbles. It's the second actions. It's the hold-up play. That's where you have Navarro, Aronson, and any other midfield runners as dangerous in between the channels. The pressing, I mentioned Colorado's a good pressing team. They have enough in their identity that it kind of defines who they are, but if you're able to beat their press, it can be aggressive enough where playing it out of the back can either be a dagger or it can be the thing that leads immediately to a goal. Colorado spreads themselves out with their press. They're very aggressive. They want to limit the number of passes that you have in your possession, in your buildup. And so they're going to attack us deep. They're going to be entering our defensive third. And I think Timo Baumgartel, Dante Polvera, Lucas McNaughton, playing it through the center backs, playing it through the central midfielders, rather, playing it over to the wing backs. They're going to have to be crisp with their passing, St. Louis is. Otherwise, Colorado will be more successful than out on their press. And that's kind of what they did against San Diego. They were very aggressive, and they prevented them from getting anything going in the final third. And then they stole a goal late. Set pieces for Colorado on that note. The late winner against San Diego came from a wide service with Paxton Aronson delivering from the right. And I always mispronounce his first name. I had looked it up earlier. I think it's Loish Williams arriving for the finisher. So Colorado's capable of manufacturing those goals. Dead balls, set pieces. They're a little better than St. Louis in their success and their efficiency. So I mentioned the 4-3-3, but honestly, when they come in the attack, they will add 5 in the attack often. So they'll leave 2, maybe 3 defenders back when they're in this possession. They'll do what St. Louis used to do, which is start with a 4-man back line, and one of the fullbacks will kind of move high as part of the attack. But they often end up looking like a 3-2-5 if they can get the ball into the final third, and they'll use those width of their right winger and their left fullback, for instance, to create those numbers advantages. I mentioned their press, but St. Louis also has a pretty good press that rivals Colorado in the quality and in the volume. But Colorado's comfortable enough on the ball. So St. Louis they don't have their backs against the wall necessarily, but they're going up against a pretty quality team that is capable of possessing the ball. So what St. Louis doesn't like to do is just out and out press. They don't like to just throw numbers on the ball wherever it is in the opponent's defensive third. They're very intentional with their press. They look for these pinch points. They try to drive the ball out wide and then create the numerical advantages with the triangles and the different diamond type shapes defensively that can trap players to force turnovers. And that's where they need to do for Colorado, who's not as good getting the ball out wide. They like to play it through to Paxton centrally. So if St. Louis can force Colorado to do that more often than not, I think that's going to be a big win for them. And then City should attack Colorado's defensive communication, meaning that they shouldn't allow them to see the field. Quick switches for St. Louis when they're on the ball, throwing the press back against them. So able to absorb the press, play through it, yeah, but at the same time, look for the guys across the field. Look for those big, long switches where you see maybe you're over on your left wing back side defensively. You're able to switch it to the midfield over to a Makai Joyner. Like those kinds of big field visions are going to come in handy and necessary in a lot of ways when Colorado's throwing numbers at you and kind of looking to push you back further and further. I think in this game, Colorado has shown that they're able to keep games tight. They've shown that they're able to win close games more often than not, especially with the confidence they have against the San Diego game or from the San Diego game. And so I think if St. Louis gets out in front early, and especially if they go into halftime with a multi-goal lead, I think that's going to throw off Colorado enough that they're going to have to abandon their game plan and be a little more aggressive in going for goal. That they're going to open themselves up to make even more mistakes. So, Stu, looking at Colorado's roster, I mentioned Rafael Navarro, I mentioned Paxton Aronson, I mentioned Georgi Minuhu. Who do you think will cause St. Louis the most concern that fans should watch out for?
Oh man, the obvious one is Navarro. I think he's up to 9.7 xG on the season now after yesterday. So he's one of the top strikers from that perspective in the league. Paxton Aronson, Brendan Aronson's younger brother, is another one to watch. I think his role in the midfield will be very interesting. See if Durkin and Edelman can neutralize him. I think Aronson is the guy who would be my one to watch. I think he's just an exciting player to watch. Obviously, the hype around his family growing up has kind of attached me to him from that perspective. But in general, I mean, it's Colorado Rapids. I any team that's owned by Stan Kroenke or associated with Stan Kroenke. Sorry, Matt, with your Arsenal fandom. I'm going to be cheering against.
It predates Kroenke. Nobody likes Stan Kroenke.
I know. I that was the elephant in the room when I mentioned that. But you have to beat them. You want to beat them. Is this a dress rehearsal for U.S. Open Cup coming up? Some extent, but in the future, our attack's going to look a lot different. You assume that with Holse and Matan in there in our TAM 9, we're going to have a lot more options and outlets for the attack than we currently have. So I'm going to go with Aronson. That's going to be my long-winded reply.
Yeah, I expect you to go back to Rafael Navarro, but I like that. Paxton Aronson. I sometimes I forget that he plays for Colorado now. Colorado's had a few changes. Georgi Minuhu also, I think he was fresh on the team, maybe just traded, or maybe it happened right after we played him, but he was a recent arrival last time we played him, and he's going to be a factor in this game, I think, too.
Yeah, Minuhu, former Sounders player, I believe.
Yep, right on. In the chat, I think there's an interesting note on the St. Louis side. Robert Clark reminds us that Sangbin scored the lone goal against Colorado. And with all that I just described of Colorado throwing numbers in their press and leaving themselves a little maybe vulnerable if we're able to beat the press, especially play the ball through them, is this an opportunity for Sangbin to maybe get a start and see what he can do, stretching the field a little bit and creating some of that, not just wide play, but some of that fast break, trying to keep Colorado a little further back on their heels. That might, that level of stretching the field might give Colorado a little pause in going for an all-out press. It's an interesting conversation, interesting facet that we could see. I don't know, to the previous conversation, what that would do to Edu Leuven, if we might see Sangbin with Hartl. It's just if they use past experiences straight up, it's definitely something that's worth considering. But this Colorado team has multiple ways to win. Like I mentioned, the 1-0 win against San Diego, they just wore them down. And Loic Williams with that first rapid start and the stoppage time goal, they force teams to just play outside themselves, and they make them uncomfortable. And then they live in these tight games, but then they steal wins there toward the end, and they're comfortable with 1 goal differentials. Like every single one of their last 5 games, 1-0, 2-1 loss, 2-1 loss, 1-0 win, 1-0 loss. They're all 1 goal. And so St. Louis is coming into this game with some crazy good stats that they haven't seen yet before. Like the fact that this is the first 3 game stretch that they've had where they've had 3 goals in all the matches since 2022. St. Louis is on a 7-match unbeaten streak. St. Louis has won 7 of their last 9 in all competitions, including 2 U.S. Open Cup matches. In this run, also to the point of keeping tight games, St. Louis has allowed more than 1 goal only twice to Austin and SKC, and one of those SKC goals was a Ben Lunt giveaway. So the St. Louis team has been really quality at minimizing goals against, in this stretch, just as much as they've been on the flip side really adept at just pouring on the goals. 3-1, 3-2, 3-0. Those are the last three. Most points picked up over that 6-game stretch in club history with a +8 goal differential during that time. And it might not seem massive, +8 in 6 games, but I distinctly remember living and breathing in minus goal differentials for the past 3 years. And let me tell you, any plus difference in a stretch of games is welcome. A 7-match unbeaten streak in all competitions, longest in club history. It's just a different city team that's playing this Colorado team that lives and dies by these margins. And so that to me is the true battle. It's the recent form of both clubs. St. Louis pouring on the goals and being defensively sound against Colorado that wants to keep this a tight game. And they'll just straight up look to steal a goal, a set piece, a free kick, a corner kick, whatever it ends up being. They're able to do that. And so who wins out in this battle of opening the game up a little bit more? And it's funny to say that we want the game to be opened up a little bit more because I think that benefits St. Louis. It's not something I'm used to saying or even really comfortable thinking about, but an open game benefits St. Louis in this regard much more than it benefits Colorado. And I think matchup wise, this will look to St. Louis to have the advantage, not just because we're at home, but because I think St. Louis's recent form has given them the confidence to be able to try enough new things and to be able to connect their passes in ways that they weren't able to successfully do so earlier in the season. The goal that we saw, the third goal with Simon Betcher against the Galaxy, is a really good example where it's starting to become muscle memory for these players. You know, as soon as you turn the ball over for Dante Pulvera, you know where your outlets are going to be. And I honestly think, Stu, that's one of the reasons we allowed that goal against LA is because we have this cohesive plan. St. Louis does. And they kind of get now where everybody's role is and what their job is in every phase of play, whether it's an immediate recovery, an immediate turnover created, or in transition or in possession. They play the ball well off of each other, and they have these one-touch passes that they look really fun and really cool, but they practice them all the time. They've ingrained in their brain where their teammates are supposed to be. It's why I think eventually this is going to be one of the more difficult systems to become acclimated to if you have no familiarity with it. If you're brought in, you don't know Yohan Demay, you don't know the other players, that's probably the biggest learning curve for this system. And it failed on the Haziel Orozco turnover that led to the goal because all of the players were still moving at least a brief period of time as if Orozco still had the ball and was doing what he was supposed to be doing. The moment he lost a little bit of possession of that ball, it all kind of fell apart because he became disjointed from everybody else. And so against Colorado, I think that's what St. Louis is going to ultimately look to do. It's use that cohesiveness, maximizing the individual talent that we now have with Hartl, Leuven, getting as much service to Betcher as possible. Our wingbacks are in form, and using that cohesiveness to play through Colorado and just exploit their press more than anything else. What are your final, any other thoughts on Colorado?
Not really. Just I've said them all about my inner motivations when it comes to Colorado is pretty obvious. Wear my heart on my sleeve there. I think a lot of us St. Louisans do. This is one of these one of the matches every year that we're not natural rivals. I would say Colorado and St. Louis when it comes to MLS play, but the history between the cities would make it so. And I don't think Colorado would consider St. Louis a natural rival. It's more of a one-way hate that they're kind of accidentally attached to because of their owner.
And they have good fans. Matt Pollard, the Burgundy Wave guys, like we appreciate the Colorado fans that we know of anyway. And it does come down to the ownership 100%.
Yeah, Colorado fans hate Kansas City, Sporting Kansas City. We hate Sporting Kansas City. So there's something we can bond over. There's that alignment that we love to see.
Well done. Everyone take a drink for that one. Before we get into our predicted 11 score predictions, some quick stat comparisons to really drive home the differences and similarities between these two teams. These are season-long stats here. St. Louis and Colorado for non-penalty goals. St. Louis has 21 to Colorado's 25. St. Louis is 19th in MLS. Colorado's 13th in non-penalty goals. St. Louis actually rose 5 slots from Wednesday in the league in non-penalty goals after their third straight 3-goal performance. Non-penalty XG, though, is where it continues to get a little different. So whereas St. Louis was 19th in MLS in goals, they are 11th in non-penalty expected goals. Colorado was 13th in non-penalty goals. They are 19th in non-penalty expected goals. So both teams kind of flip-flopped in overperforming, underperforming. And St. Louis is consistently getting better. So they are performing. So they had a 2.2 XG, 3 goals scored. They're overperforming lately too, which is a big storyline. St. Louis just wasn't capable of doing that before. Set pieces, St. Louis has 4 set piece goals to Colorado's 6th. St. Louis has an XG on set pieces of 5.46. They're still underperforming, but Colorado has a 4.36 XG, overperforming that as well. So Colorado's been pretty consistent in overperforming their XG, and that's what quality players like Navarro will do when he himself is creating so much and scoring so much. Non-penalty goals allowed. Let's look defensively. St. Louis is tied for 11th with Colorado in non-penalty goals allowed with 21. So both teams are right there in what they allow, but both teams are moving in the opposite direction when it comes to expected non-penalty goals allowed. St. Louis 6th in MLS and Colorado 13th. The defensively, I mentioned that Colorado is a more aggressive pressing team than St. Louis. They are in a couple different ways. So St. Louis is 6th in PPDA, passes per defensive action. Colorado is 3rd. So Colorado will allow you to pass the ball fewer times before they make a defensive movement on the ball. But St. Louis is actually, as far as height of defensive actions, they are more aggressive on the height of the ball than Colorado is. So Colorado may let you play the ball up to a certain extent. They're 8th in MLS in average height of defensive actions, but they will be aggressive from the jump on that first pass. St. Louis might look to pinch you, like I mentioned, onto the wings, where they're 6th in MLS on PPDA, but 4th in average height of defensive actions. Okay, there's your comparison stats-wise to round that one up. Stu, let's jump into our predicted starting 11 as we round this one home. I'll start. Roman Berkey at goal, obviously. Same center backs we mentioned earlier, Dante Pulvera, Timo Baumgartel, and Lucas McNaughton. My wing backs, I've got Thomas Totland and Mackay Joyner running it back. And I wrote this one earlier, so I'm kind of just looking at it and realizing a couple things that I've talked through actually make sense now, especially with this. Daniel Edelman and Edu Leuven I have in my central midfield, with Marcel Hartl and Sangbin Zhang in my attacking mid and Simon Betcher up top. I kind of want to see more Edu Leuven in central midfield, because I know that's his best opportunity, I think, to have a firm starting role after the new signings arrive. And so I kind of want to see Edelman and Leuven, but it pains me to take Durkin out of there. There's just no right answer to me. I do like the tactical advantage of Sangbin and what he can offer, especially against this Colorado team. So that's what I'm going to ride on is Sangbin, and then just trying to figure it out from there.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit differently. We talked a little bit about the break after Colorado of a week to rest. Now you saw that as maybe a chance to maybe rotate before, and I'm thinking maybe we're being seen as it's a chance to maybe run the guys out a little bit more than maybe DeMay would otherwise. So I'm going with Berkey, Pulvera, Baumgartel, McNaughton, Santos on the left as my wing back. That's maybe not going to be popular. Edelman, Durkin, Totland on the right wing back slot, Hartl, Leuven, and Betcher. I'm just not entirely sure if DeMay is going to trust Joyner with 2 starting assignments in 1 week.
That's fair. And I think defensively, it's a different responsibility with the tools that Colorado has versus the depleted team that the Galaxy were throwing out. It wouldn't surprise me if come match day, your lineup ends up being our consensus flyover pick, especially the Durkin midfield, the Leuven in the attack. And I could probably be talked into Santos and Totland just based on what I think Colorado will look like.
Yeah, I don't know if I love the lineup as much as yours, but
well, mine has the excitement of Joyner, and that's just kind of inherent in that. But at the same time, tactically, the expectations for Colorado clearly plays into it. DeMay clearly feels like he has enough depth that he can mix and match to best the opponent. So you have the different looks that St. Louis have. And I think this is honestly, I don't think a lot of fans give DeMay credit for this. And it's, as we talk about the center back rotation or lack thereof, and Falufal not seeing time, and that that facet of it. The other side is the 1 or 2 player changes that we see game to game is pretty much the max that Deme is willing to do. I think he's even said on record multiple times that he's not looking to make wholesale changes, 3, 4, 5 guys, 1 or 2 changes, but the meaningfulness of those 1 or 2 changes at wing back and attacking midfield, it changes the game pretty considerably. I think that's what I'm looking for here is what are those 1 to 2 changes at most going to look like from the Galaxy based on what he thinks tactically will benefit St. Louis, because they're capable of having multiple looks, different looks and different advantages that can really put them over the top against the opponent, in this case, Colorado. So score predictions, Stu. I'll let you take first on this one.
I'm not sure if I see a clean sheet on the horizon, but it's a home match. City's flying high. Got to go with a win. I'm going to say 2-1.
All right. I have 2-0 on this one. Berkey deserves a clean sheet. He deserved it against the Galaxy. I'm going to give him one on this one, and I'm going to hope that the defense can win out. It's going to be a tougher battle, I think, here than it was against LA. And as we saw against LA, the toughest part is seeing it out. And if Colorado's good at anything, it's stealing one late, keeping it close until then. And that's the risk. That's the danger. So it's going to take a lot to keep a clean sheet on this one, but we both have wins. We're both optimistic. How can we not be, being in now a playoff position where we've climbed up out of the gutter of comparisons to SKC, and now we're in playoff position, 8th place, with eyes on 3rd or 4th in reach points wise. This is a tight MLS season that's accrued so far. When we look at how the Western Conference is breaking out right now, going into this weekend after a full slate of matches on Wednesday, St. Louis has 22 points and is just 4 points out of 4th place. That's how tight this is. Real Salt Lake is in 4th with 26, tied with FC Dallas at 26. Seattle has 24, Houston 23, St. Louis and Minnesota with 22. A win here puts us in not just striking range, but in conversation of a top 4 spot at the midway point of the MLS season, because this match this weekend, match day 17, that's the midway point. That's where we are. That's where we're taking stock of things after this. And it's a big match in that regard as well. To be in this position before any reinforcements arrive that can, one would think, only bolster this club. I mean, there's no reason to not be optimistic about where this club is and is going, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Optimism should be high. Fans should be enjoying what's going on right now and eagerly looking forward to what should be a very exciting match against Stan Kroenke's Colorado Rapids.
Boo, Kroenke. All right, that's it for us on Flyover Footy. For Stuart Holgren, my name is Matt Baker. Thank you so much for joining us on this Fallout preview of the Rapids, look at Carlo Holse and what lies ahead for St. Louis City. It's an exciting time to be a St. Louis City fan. I'm always excited to be a City fan, but especially when we're winning. It doesn't get any better than this and the rise that we're on with Yohan Deme. So for Stuart Holgren, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the match, and as always, go City.
Go City.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining on this cool, crisp Thursday evening. I do want to, one thing Chris Klein said, will we see McSorley or Mbake even make the match day, or will he be back on the bench? Honestly, I didn't even address that, because to me, we're seeing the depth chart I mentioned earlier. Like Mbake, he's lucky to be on the team at this point with the way he's seeing match day rosters. I mean, it's just not working out. I mean, it seems like it's swing and a miss.
Hebert's definitely moved ahead of him. I mean, maybe he was always ahead of him.
Hebert is nothing if not Mr. Consistent. I mean, he's got a floor. I'll say that. He doesn't have a ceiling, but he has a floor, and that floor is acceptable as an emergency defensive option, much more so than any potential that Mbake has, it seems. Or, Corey Ray is meddling in the roster, and he said, "I need my Canadians here." That's a joke. That's not something that's happening. But yeah, no, it's Mbake and McSorley too. I have less of an answer on McSorley because Palmer Alt was signed. Like, he didn't have to be here. Palmer Alt didn't have to be here. We didn't have to go with him. We chose to at now the expense of McSorley. So that one's a little more interesting. But honestly, I'm wrapping my head around the last thing I'll say before we go on the live stream here. I'm starting to flip a switch in my brain about expectations for this club. and seeing what's possible as far as the quality top to bottom. And I like McSorley as a person. I'm sure Palmer Alt's a great kid. I'm ready to move past this as a second option in striker. I'm ready to move past this as a second option anywhere, where it's a promoted City 2 person who has a clear ceiling and quality. And the only reason people want to see more of them on the field in matches is because what they're seeing otherwise isn't cutting it.
Yeah.
The grass is not always greener on the other side. And I'm ready for this club to begin to be serious in their competitiveness top to bottom, where you're having the attacking midfield conversation is what we should be having all across the board. The conversation of Holse, of Matan, of Leuven, there's 3 players with 1 spot available to them, maybe. That's the conversation we should be having top to bottom across the board. And once we get there, we're building our way to there. Once we get there, we'll be a serious contender in Major League Soccer, and a consistent serious contender. And I can see that future. I see that vision and how that's going to play out. And that's going to take a couple windows. And we might lose some really endearing players along the way. But at the same time, I think our club's going to be better for it to have those kinds of serious conversations and not, do you think McSorley is going to make the matchday roster? And I'm not making fun of the question at all, but I'm just saying, like, we need to move past that kind of conversation. We need to move past Hebert or Mbake and understand that the players that we need to be having decisions on should be at a higher level. And we're getting there. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we've raised the floor. Now let's raise the ceiling.
Jeremy asks, how would you feel about City bringing in a U22 striker? I kept mentioning TAM level striker earlier. I'm not a fan of, in general, bringing in a U22 striker with the expectation that of what we will have for that striker, which is an immediate role, scoring goals and finishing goals every single game. It's almost the same conversation as Simon Betcher, but a different, a different level of conversation, where Betcher doesn't seem like the guy that should be relied upon to finish goals at the rate with which he's being given service. And I don't want to thrust a U22 striker in that role. I haven't looked too deep into this. I don't think MLS has a good hit rate on U22 strikers. But at the same time, I think there's a much better proven track record of a TAM level type player. And just for the podcast listeners, in case you don't follow me on social media, I did the math. Like, to be able to sign a TAM level striker, there's 3 factors that go into TAM level players kind of a thing. It's the salary, it's the transfer fee, and it's the length of contract. So if we were to sign a striker to a 3-year contract at a $2 million transfer fee, they could be making like $1 million a year. And over the life, averaging it out, amortizing it over that contract, it is TAM level. Like, that's the kind of money we're talking about, where you can spend a couple $1 million on a transfer fee, or a cash for in Major League Soccer, $1.5, $2 million. That's not unheard of to get quality players. And you can sign them to a multi-year deal. You can pay them $1 million, $1.5 million a year. And it makes sense that way. Like, that's the level and caliber of player that I think we should expect Corey Ray to sign, knowing that we're out of DP slots now. I think that's it. You ready to bounce, Stu?
Yeah, I'm gonna crash. I imagine you will as well.
I'm riding on fumes at this point. I'm purely riding the vibes. I'm going to crash as soon as I post this. But thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate you hanging out, and as always, go City, and hope for a win this week and a happy fallout afterwards. Bye everybody.